What's up, guys? Thank you so much if you've made it this far in the video. I'll go ahead and show you guys some of the details with this trunk and then talk a little bit about the future, what I plan on doing with it. All right, so I got this trunk from Souvenir. I'll have it linked down below, and it actually fit pretty good. I've installed quite a few carbon fiber trunks, and it's really hit or miss when it comes to fitment and how much you actually need to modify the fiberglass or the carbon to make it fit well. This one really didn't take too much work to get it to this point. But before we get into all that, I just want to talk about the style of it. So it's kind of like the CSL, but it has a little bit of the harder edges on the corners, which I just think looks really good on this body style. I think it's a little bit more aggressive. I will say it looks a little bit funky on the car right now because the car is just basically stock. But I think once we get all of the supporting modifications and my final wheel setup, this is going to look really good and it's going to complement the car. I will say that more than likely I'm going to paint match this trunk. As beautiful as this carbon fiber is, I just think paint match looks a lot better. However, I might leave this exposed across here and possibly this exposed behind the license plate, sort of like I did on the F30 if you guys saw that build, just leaving a couple of features exposed carbon. This is a 2x2 weave. It is reinforced by fiberglass. Overall, the carbon fiber looks really, really good. You guys did see me polish it, which I think just helped deepen up the gloss a little bit. So as you guys saw in the video, there were a lot of things that I had to drill and Dremel and shave. That's pretty normal when it comes to carbon fiber trunks. I always tell people that when it comes to these sort of molds with carbon trunks on BMWs, if you don't want to have to modify anything, just stick with the factory OEM trunk. But if you're okay with modifying a little bit, or you just want to have a body shop do it, these are a fantastic option. Now, obviously the CSL one is a bit more rounded off. This one has the harder edges, and I do actually really like it. I am curious to see how it grows on me in the future. Like I said before, once we get all of these supporting modifications on the car. So for the roundel, I did end up going with the shadow line badges from I&D. I think these look really, really good on this car. I also drilled out the factory mounting point holes, so it's just like an OEM setup on this trunk. Same deal with this guy. I drilled out the factory mounting hole, so it's like a factory license plate mount. And for the M3 badge, I ended up going with the I&D gloss black M3 badge. I think it looks really good. Sort of continues with the theme of the black going on with this car. If you guys are ever curious on how to line up the M3 badge, if you have to replace yours or you're upgrading, I'll leave a link down in the description to a document that tells you exactly where it needs to be based off of OEM. And that is the document that I used in order to place mine onto the trunk. But yeah, overall it turned out really good. Everything is very uniform, even. I think it's about as good as you're going to get with aftermarket and, you know, trying to replicate OEM placements. So if we take a look at fitment, this thing actually fit really good out of the box. There are some things that I did adjust, which is to be expected when you guys upgrade a trunk like this. You will notice, however, the gaps on both sides are pretty much identical. Personally, I think this is pretty good fitment when it comes to an aftermarket trunk. One thing that I did have to do in order to make it fit and close perfectly, so these obviously you will have to adjust around in order to move it left or right, center, whatever you need to do. And then I ended up loosening these two back here and just propping the rear up a little bit because it seemed to sink in a little bit on this side. Once I lifted that up over here, it was completely flush on both sides. That just takes some going back and forth and loosening and tightening and adjusting. I also adjusted this guy down here. If you take off this plastic cover, there are a couple Torx bolts that hold in this latching mechanism down here for the trunk latch right here. I ended up moving this up because when I first installed the trunk, it wouldn't latch. But after I moved that up as far as I could, when I closed the trunk, soft close, it closes really nicely. So I don't have to force it. I don't have to slam it. Just move that latching mechanism up as far as possible. And now it sits perfectly. One other thing that you guys saw me do, I did replace my actual trunk handle, the electronic handle piece right here. Mine on my OEM trunk was pretty beat up. And then I did, of course, use the OEM lights. You guys saw me do a lot of dremeling around here. Pretty normal with an aftermarket trunk. I will say one thing that I wasn't super stoked about on this trunk was the missing paint on the bottom side in here. So you can sort of see the resin and the fiberglass through there. It would have just been nice if this was completely painted. However, if I wasn't painting this entire trunk, I probably would have just masked everything off and laid on a layer of just black paint through here and it would have been fine. Would have looked pretty much like factory, but that was really the only thing I wasn't too hyped about. Nonetheless, overall, I think everything worked out really, really well. Considering that this is an aftermarket unit, I was able to run, of course, the factory piece right here with all of the push pins around there. I didn't run the emergency latch. I just have the wire sitting back over here zipped tied up. Of course you can if you want to do that. Just run it over here and pop it through and you'll be able to keep that. That's just like one more thing that I have to remove when I'm taking this thing on and off, which happens often. One other thing that I did is recently in another video, I ended up replacing these with brand new ones. However, I noticed that the trunk was really difficult to close when I had those newer trunk shocks in. So I ended up putting my old ones back on, and it actually seems to be much better with those. So they're a little bit worn out, but there's not as much friction when I'm pushing it down. This trunk is extremely light. It's much, much lighter than factory OEM trunk. Obviously it's carbon fiber, so that is to be expected. But yeah, I think it turned out really freaking good, man. I think it's gonna look even better once it's paint matched. I know that trunks like this, carbon fiber trunks and hoods and stuff, it's not for everybody, but I do think it is a really cool and unique touch to the car. I saw this trunk on a supercharged E92 and it was completely paint matched, and I really liked it. I think on darker cars, you can get away with the carbon fiber because obviously it's a darker car, kind of meshes in, but nonetheless, I think that they do look a lot better paint matched. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I said, everything fits really good. All of these line up really well. It's not sticking up above the paint or anything. It's nice and flush and even. The taillights fit in very well also. I didn't have to do any shaving over there. Those went directly in. And of course, same deal on this side. It all fits really good. So little gaps like this, you know, where it's a bit uneven, you're going to get that with aftermarket trunks, no matter what you do. I've also ran the Sabon trunk, which is supposed to be much nicer. That was on my F30, and that thing was an absolute nightmare. I definitely do not recommend that one for the F30. I don't even know if they make that anymore, but that thing just never fit right, and the taillights didn't fit in there well, and I had to do a lot of work to just get that thing to operate somewhat functional. But this one was actually pretty easy. I was quite surprised at how simple it was and how everything sort of just slapped together pretty well. So I did take my time with it. You know, I wanted to make sure that it fit really good, or as good as possible. And yeah, I just think overall it turned out pretty freaking nice, man. So if you're on the fence about this one, give it some time, wait till you see the rest of the things that I put on the car. I think it's gonna make a little more sense then, because I'm looking at it now and I'm like, man, it is a lot of carbon. It's really aggressive for how stock the car looks. It looks a bit out of place, but I think down the road it's gonna look really good once I have everything together and the styling and everything sort of evolves. The aggression at that point of the trunk will sort of match the rest of the car. One other thing that I didn't show in the video, in order to run these wires up here, a good way to do it is I just used a coat hanger, and I actually ran the coat hanger down, and then I wrapped tape around the wire loom and the coat hanger, and I just pulled the coat hanger back up, and then that just fished through all of the wires and everything, and it just made everything a lot easier in order to pull it through. So yeah, you guys, that is the install on my carbon fiber trunk. I think it looks really good. E92 M3 carbon fiber trunk. It's a sick design. If you guys have the patience and the necessary tools, you can of course do this at home, but I'll have all of this stuff linked down below for you guys, the trunk and all the tools that I use in order to make this happen. But yeah, you guys, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know it was a little bit of a longer video. Hope you guys all enjoyed your holidays. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.